working with polygons and compound paths as well as anchored objects. So in InDesign, we looked at some of these graphic tools, and I wanted to specifically point out the Polygon tool and what we can do with it. So the Polygon tool is a way that we can create multi-sided objects. And you can see as I drag out now, it actually is creating a star. So what we want to do is get into this frame options, the polygon setting dialog box, so that we can specify how we want our polygon to look like. So by double clicking on the tool, it actually will bring open the polygon settings. And here we see number of sides. So I'm able to say the number of sides that I want. Now if you apply a star inset, what this will do then is create with a percentage an inset. And the greater the star inset percentage, the more acute and longer the points will be. So if I were to decrease this, let's just go down to 0 here now, click OK. Look what happens. So now I've lost the star inset and I'm back to a polygon. Okay. Now if I wanted to hold down Shift, when I hold Shift and drag with the polygon, it will allow my sides to be equal and it will kind of constrain the orientation so it snaps to the horizontal grid. Now let's just double click this again and let's do something more dramatic. So I can increase, let's do this to 25% and click OK, and there you can see it's more of a star shape. Now I can again increase, let's take this back down to 0, and number of sides, let's increase it to maybe 10. And if I want to see, I'm gonna click OK, and there's a 10-sided polygon. So you have a lot of options to do use this tool. I hold down the Control key to deselect. Let's go back here and now let's just go to 3. And what will we get if we create 3? Now I'm doing this without anything selected this time, so if I click OK and now click and drag, it remembers those settings. Okay, so if I close InDesign, open this back up tomorrow, it's going to remember that I left it at 3 sides. Now a compound path. This is something that maybe you have learned in Illustrator. Basically, it's where one object cuts a hole in another. So if we take this polygon here and I make a, well, let's just use this one. And I scale this down just a little bit, and let's move this to be on top of this. And we'll zoom in just a smidge. Okay, let's put some fill colors in here so we can see what happens. On this multi-sided, let's go to our swatches and let's just choose a color. And same with our 5-sided object, let's just choose a color. So now I have a blue shape that's on top of a yellow shape. And remember, we can always go into layers. This is more connected to Illustrator than it is Photoshop because I have a sub-layer for all of my objects. I physically have to create a new layer when I want to use a new layer for my materials. So with 2 objects overlapped, I'm going to select both of those objects. I'm going to go to my object menu. I'm going to go to paths, and I'm going to choose make compound path. It looks as though maybe my top shape just turned white, but when in fact, if I zoom out and let's get some overlapping shapes here. Again, let's put a color on this. Go to swatches. Let's choose red. I drag this shape. It's behind right now in the stacking order, so I could do one of 2 things. I could go to layers and I could actually rearrange. And I wanted to show you layers because it does say compound path. So I could click and drag this up, or I could do a right click and find my arrange and bring this to the front. So here's the arrange and bring to front. And there you can see now that this is a compound path, and what has happened is that top object cut a hole through the bottom object. Now you can do some pretty cool things with this. I can have this be contain images. I can have it contain different things, so it can really add some impact to your overall design. Last item, anchored objects. Turning on my layer 1, which happens to have some text. Okay? What I want to do is I'm going to slide these two things off to the side here for a moment. We'll scale down just a bit. An anchored object is basically an object that I create and I use as a text character within a body of text. So I can do it in one of two ways. I can do a place or pasted into the text box, or I can use an object menu item. So let's go the long route first. I'm going to take my cursor and we'll put it right in front of the W here. So you can see I have a flashing insertion point in my text copy. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this object here. I'm going to copy it. Copy, Control C. I can go under Edit and copy here as well. Going back to my text right here, let's do an object menu, anchored object, and insert. So now I have some options here where I can assign different items. The key thing here probably is how I want this to be connected to my text. Do I want it inline, or do I want to customize this? Or do I want it above line? So if I choose inline, I have an Y offset if I do want to raise or lower it. Okay, if I do the above line, basically it does as it says, that it will place above the line. So most of the time you're going to choose inline. I'll just leave it as that. Click OK. All right, so what I've done is I've put a placeholder. So this is ready for a graphic to be either placed, file and place, or I can copy and paste. Okay, so that's one method. I'm going to undo this with Control Z, and let's do the other method where I just take an object and I copy it, use my text tool to place an insertion cursor, and do a paste. And there it is, it's inserted. How do I know that? When I start to press enter, you can see how it moves with my body copy. And I can, while this is inside here now, I can go back up to object and I can go to my anchored object, and now I have options. So here's where I can change this. So let's just say I want this to be a little bit negative. Look at what happens. Okay, and I can click OK, and I can scale this. So it has the functions of being a graphic. However, now I'm hanging it way low. Now it's part of my text, and you see there's a little anchor icon right here indicating that it is anchored. So object, anchored object, options. Let's just set this back. Let's do this. Let's go back to 0 offset here. And now it's in line with the baseline. That's where it will typically fall. So that's an anchored object. All right, so we covered making polygons with multiple sides using that star inset. We covered a compound path, making a hole through to an object. And then we covered anchored objects, basically objects that flow along with the text.